few days ago, I was able to harness some momentum from unpacking from our trip to my stepfather's memorial in DC. I set up a large garbage bag, a cardboard box for recycling, a box for giveaways and donations. I tackled the amorphous and eternally growing stacks and clusters of things tucked on low shelves and in corners. I'm not done. I know I'm not done. I unearthed old toys and incomplete games. I discovered caches of clothes that could maybe fit one of the dogs, but definitely no humans in my house. I also found a shoebox. I examined the outside carefully to make sure there were no requests or warnings about privacy anywhere, gave it a shake before opening, and peeked inside. No mice. So that was good. Instead, what I found was a collection of toys and tools from the brief fascination my kids had with spying. There's a larger backstory, but the important thing is that they used Christmas and birthday requests to amass tools of the trade, like plastic binoculars, voice recorders, listening devices, pens with invisible ink, and the crown jewels, a set of several walkie-talkies. I remember that Christmas. I remember hearing them giggle and laugh as they snuck around the house and talked to each other in the code that they've always had before cell phones had become surgically attached to their hands, and when we all still looked up and around the room most of the time. They loved those walkie-talkies. And so I admit to some mixed feelings when they admitted that they were done with them. I thought these devices might inspire enough sentimentality to survive the reality-based purge that I was also very much in favor of. But they admitted to being well and truly done with the whole box. And I, having checked in with appropriate parties, began to move the spy equipment from the shoebox into the giveaway box. Toy binoculars, voice recorders, dried out invisible ink pen to the trash can, and then I paused. Might we need the walkie-talkies? Should I hang on to them? What if I didn't even really finish that thought? I just put them down in a different spot. Not any of the three receptacles I designated for my task, and for my neurodivergent friends, we know this is not the way to go. It breaks the cardinal rules of this whole set of procedures, but I'm not much of a rule follower, and the nagging voice of worry usually gets at least a fair shake in my head. So I set them aside, because what if? In talking to a friend the next day, she told me she had just finished clearing a spot for a new nut tree for protein. And that's how she said it. I'm going to plant a nut tree for protein. She also said she was installing a solar-powered well pump for their well so that when the power goes out, she could water the garden. I'm all for solar anything, but was curious and so asked if they lose power a lot. And she said, no, but I mean, what if? And she left the sentence incomplete, perhaps knowing that my imagination would excel in supplying the rest. As I zoom out on these conversations, I realize I've had more interactions that all have this same flavor, including an interesting exchange in Aldi, where a fellow customer whispered the Costco egg prices to me as I reached for my expensive golden dozen out of the refrigerator. He also reminded me that Costco still has DEI policies in place. A love note from the resistance. What happens when we run out of eggs? I mean, what if? I've seen stores promoting canned goods and chest freezers, dehydrators, and ammo, because you can't buy a dehydrator without a side of ammo. And I imagine, right? And I imagine there are whisper networks for all of these goods that I'm just not a part of. I've seen folks buying a lot of single items at one time and hear words that used to be reserved for the prepper community, stocking shelves in a way that's reminiscent of the great toilet paper scare of 2020. I've seen a run on produce from Mexico and Canada in the time just a few days ago before the tariff plan failed, and then wondered what folks did with all those peppers and tomatoes. I've seen videos online with guidance about bug-out bags and documents. And Fred's, I'm not looking for these things. So while I'm willing to consider that I clicked on something that's fundamentally changed my algorithm, I am equally willing to believe that this content, this sentiment, is simply becoming more prevalent. And I want to be really clear about something. While there may be humor in some of the ways these things sound or the way that I'm saying them, I'm not mocking it. I'm not endorsing it, and I'm not recommending against it. I'm just noticing the fear trickling through our decision-making, through our information environment, even in the areas that have typically been dominated by entertainment. I see it, I hear it, I feel it, and I get it. Things feel really unpredictable right now, and they're supposed to. And we feel as if there is much that is out of our control. And so it is, at least in our culture, pretty natural to turn to what we think we can control, which is the well-being of our smallest units, ourselves, our families, our households. We can have a conversation later about whether or not it is actually possible to control any of that either, but I'm going to set that aside for some practicality this morning. My point is, we don't like it when things feel chaotic and scary, and so we turn to what we can manage. We exert our management and influence where we can to ensure that we, as individual and very small units, are okay. It works for me and my family, as the saying goes. But here's a bit of cold water. Just in case you wanted some cold water. That is privileged individualism. And privileged individualism is how we got into this mess in the first place. Furthermore, if any of the apocalyptic visions people are entertaining should come to pass, individuals are unlikely to make it alone. We simply don't have the skill set for post-apocalyptic frontier living. If you're not sure I'm right about that, watch American Primeval for 10 seconds, and you will know that, like me, you are not prepared. We don't have the luxury of turning away from other human beings, at least for longer than it takes to rest. We need to stay tuned in to the public square. Because when we turn away from what is happening in the public square, we sacrifice pieces of the public square in the form of debate, dialogue, social media platforms, editorial pages. We are denying the fundamental reality of our interdependence, our interconnectedness, the best shot we have at actually living and living well, no matter what happens. The public square is the community garden we need to survive. And it is the landscape of the holy. It is the moral high ground. Our beloved values call us out of our homes. This is not a pandemic, even if it feels like one. It is not a communicable disease, even if it looks like one sometimes. The problems we are facing in our society right now are not things we can hide from until the storm passes, because, and here's the kicker, what history has taught us, even if we missed the fundamental moral imperative of taking care of one another, is that if we are willing to sacrifice parts of our community in order to stay safe at home, we will all suffer. Examples? Chattel slavery and the reservation system. Groups of people subjugated for the benefit of others that have left not just an enduring moral stain on the United States, but economic inequities and psychosocial maladies. We have all suffered from these historical choices. Japanese internment camps, blacklists, Jim Crow, the suppressed vote by property and then by sex, black codes, laws against homosexuality, real estate redlining, job discrimination. None of them just hurt the population targeted. Not one. The thing is, at any given moment, one of these abominations might be occurring, and it may not actually enter your home. It may not touch you or your closest kin. Even if it makes you sad or sick or worried or disappointed, it may not actually hurt you today in a concrete way. Individualism tells you that you can stay focused on the smallest unit possible in that moment. It's working okay for me and my family. But friends, interdependence demands something more. It precedes justice. It precedes equity. Because frankly, you have to believe that there is a larger we in order to even get to questions of justice and inequity. You have to believe there are such things as the public square, public goods, decisions and events that are good for us as a whole, even if they don't directly benefit you. You have to believe that is worth serving all of the parts of our delicate web. You have to believe that your choices, your motion, your stillness, your inaction all have reverberations along those narrow filaments that tie us one to another. And I know you believe it because, friends, none of what is proposed would be so upsetting if you didn't give a damn. If you didn't already feel connected, if the threads of the web weren't already shaking, it wouldn't upset you. You can't hide from our interdependence. Your heart won't let you. So what do? I propose that we take care of ourselves and one another. Okay, good. Sermon's over. I'll see you later. I'm kidding. I recognize it's not that simple. And if there's anything that COVID has taught us, it's that taking care of ourselves and one another can be really complicated. So I'm going to make a few suggestions to get you started, with the hope that in the days and weeks to come you share your own discoveries about how to balance those tasks. And it's a list. Sorry. First, Find some reliable way to be informed about what's going on. Check in with that source, or preferably those sources, and know that news will continue to arrive all day, and you cannot possibly keep up. If you have a tendency toward being a news hound like I do, make some rules for yourself. You're needed elsewhere. Your energy is needed elsewhere. 2, be careful in both your understanding and, perhaps more importantly, your sharing of information. It's important to recognize that actions that are being announced are not necessarily already happening, and that many announcements never make it to the actual happening stage. Be sure, if you share information, that you're accurate about what has been said versus what is happening. Your care is needed. 3, recognize that you can have reactions other than fear, especially about things that are not happening. You may be sad. You may be disgusted. You may be angry. Fear can be paralyzing. Try to be more specific with your feeling words. Give yourself the gift of zooming out and observing yourself a little. Don't let fear become the paralyzing catch-all emotion. You are needed elsewhere. 4, this is the most pragmatic. Set a timer. It takes a great deal of energy to not cry or freak out or throw dishes or whatever your emotional self wants to do in response to our national chaos. So let yourself have that feeling and set a timer. 15 minutes to really be there in it. Cry, hit pillows, scream, whatever works for you. I keep coming back to breaking dishes, so I think I'm going to hit up Goodwill really soon. Let yourself have the feeling. It will be much easier to move forward with the rest of your day. If you are a journal person, do that. If that sounds like a lot of work to you, do something else. Whatever helps you let some of it out, because you are needed elsewhere. Finally, push yourself a little past where you're comfortable in helping other people. No matter what happens in the days, weeks, and months to come, there is work to be done right here in our own community. There are people in need already, and there will likely be more people in need in the days to come. There are people who are more vulnerable. Push yourself a little further to take concrete action to help. While you're there, talk to people. Make new connections and feel the strands of that web getting stronger. Discover that you do not need to be on the frontier alone. No one was ever meant to. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. And it is okay to be scared. None of that will be better sitting at home with the curtains drawn tight. You must let the world in, and you must meet the world. Because those doors, those boundaries, those dividing lines, they are all that keeps us from being and knowing love. May we find our way with hands clasped and hearts wide open.